I was angered, and I mean, I ended, and you know, most of the stop and frisk. I mean, I think it's 9 out of the 10 of the stops they're not, the person's not a criminal. They don't. I guess I want to do roles that like are full of hope and joy too, you know. And I mean, I think I'm at a time and I want to try to do things like that. I want to do more films for my kids.
At 64, Forest Whitaker is still walking through a tragedy with no end in sight. A boy who grew up in poverty carrying a disfigured face that haunted him all his life. A star once searched in the middle of the street, treated like a thief just because of his skin color, even though he was innocent. A broken marriage and the loneliness of old age. The cruelest paradox is this: Forest Whitaker once stepped onto the stage of glory to lift the golden Oscar statue, the pinnacle every actor dreams of. Yet even the dazzling light of the Oscars could not save him from the tragedies and darkness slowly consuming him. Forest Whitaker, a Hollywood legend, and also a soul scarred with wounds so deep a tragedy that cuts to the heart. His tragedy began in childhood. Forest Whitaker was born on July 15, 1961 in Longview, Texas, into a poor African-American family. His father, Forrest Stephen Whitaker Sr., worked in insurance, but later became frequently unemployed and struggled with illness. His mother, Laura Frances Smith, was a teacher, but her modest salary was never enough to raise 4 children. When Forrest was only 4, the family left Texas for South Central Los Angeles, a neighborhood infamous for violence, poverty, and racial tensions. Every night the sound of gunfire echoed, drugs seeped into every alley, and gangs cast a dark shadow over childhood. But the deepest pain was written on his face. Whitaker was born with a congenital defect called ptosis, which caused his eyelids to droop. His face always seemed sad, weary. Children mocked him, adults pitied him. It wasn't only emotional pain. Ptosis also affected his vision. Whenever he looked up, his sight was immediately blocked. Yet in a bitter twist of fate, those sorrowful eyes that made him the target of ridicule became his destined weapon, allowing him to embody tragic characters on screen. But the greatest shadow wasn't just the defect. Growing up in Los Angeles in the 60s, young Whitaker soon tasted social injustice. Near his home, the Black Panther's office once handed out free breakfast to poor children, their only hope. One day, Forrest witnessed that office explode, its walls charred and collapsing. He also saw his father mistreated just for driving into a wealthy neighborhood. Those memories never faded, carving deep scars in the boy's mind. Fearing her son would be pulled into gangs in Compton, his mother sent Forrest to Palisades High, a school of mostly white students over an hour away by bus each day. Every single day, he made the long trip only to feel like an outsider, different in skin color, different in neighborhood, different even in his face. All of this shaped Forest Whitaker's extraordinary resilience, a soul of depth, and a heart full of scars. Forest Whitaker was never seen as the perfect candidate for Hollywood, but it was precisely those imperfections that turned him into one of the most versatile artists in the world. Forest Whitaker, a journey of glory, drenched in tears. As a teenager, Forest Whitaker never dreamed of becoming an actor. Music was his first love. He dreamed of being an opera singer and won a scholarship to California State Polytechnic University, Pomona, to study vocal performance. But fate was cruel. A devastating throat injury stole that dream of singing away. Refusing to give up, Whitaker tried college football only to abandon it after a back injury. When both music and sports closed their doors, when it seemed every path was blocked, he found an unexpected way out the stage. Whitaker switched to drama at the University of Southern California, then moved on to Drama Studio London to study classical acting. Without the conventional Hollywood good looks, he brought to the stage something far more powerful: sorrowful eyes, a unique presence, and absolute immersion in his roles. Opportunity came in the early 1980s when Whitaker began landing small roles in films. His brief appearance in Fast Times at Ridgemont High 1982 lasted only a few minutes, but it caught the attention of directors. Just a few years later, Whitaker appeared in Platoon 1986, Oliver Stone's war masterpiece. But it wasn't until 1988 that he truly stunned Hollywood when he became the legendary saxophonist Charlie Bird Parker in Clint Eastwood's Bird. It wasn't just acting, it was haunting transformation. He learned to play saxophone, lived in isolation to understand Parker's pain and self-destruction. The result, Whitaker won at the Cannes Film Festival, along with a string of other major awards. Critics declared, he doesn't just act, he lives the character. Through the 1990s and 2000s, he continued to prove his craft with distinctive roles from The Crying Game 1992 to Ghost Dog: The Way of the Samurai 1999. But the brightest peak of his career came with The Last King of Scotland 2006. Whitaker portrayed Idi Amin, the brutal dictator of Uganda. The role earned him the Academy Award for Best Actor, along with a Golden Globe and a BAFTA. Forest Whitaker stepped firmly into the ranks of Hollywood legends. He became only the fourth black actor in film history to win the Oscar for Best Actor, standing alongside Sidney Poitier, Denzel Washington, and Jamie Foxx. Yet the darkness of the role left Whitaker deeply shaken. The process of embodying Idi Amin left scars that would not heal. To transform into the notorious Ugandan dictator, Whitaker gained more than 40 pounds. He learned Swahili, perfected the Ugandan accent, and studied hundreds of hours of footage on Amin. He even lived in Uganda for months, meeting with Amin's former bodyguards to absorb the frightening essence of the man. When filming was done instead of relief, Forrest sank into severe stress and depression. He admitted, "There were times I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself. I saw another man, violent, out of control. I was afraid of myself." In an interview, Kerry Washington, who played Amin's wife, recalled, "He was terrifying to work with because he was Idi the whole time we filmed." James McAvoy, his co-star, also confessed that being around Whitaker during that period felt like walking on eggshells. The Oscar brought him to the summit of glory, but it also left unshakable psychological scars. After his 2006 Oscar, many thought Forest Whitaker's career would soar endlessly. But reality was different. Hollywood is unforgiving for a black actor. Even one with an Oscar opportunities did not suddenly flood in. In the years that followed, Whitaker kept challenging himself with new projects. Vantage Point 2008 and Repo Men 2010 fell short of expectations, even losing heavily at the box office. The turning point came in 2013 when he returned with The Butler. In the film, Whitaker became Cecil Gaines, a black butler who served in the White House under 8 U.S. presidents. The role was more than cinema. It was a living portrait of black history in miniature. The Butler not only triumphed at the box office with over $175 million worldwide, it brought Forest Whitaker's name back to the very center of Hollywood. Whitaker didn't stop there. He stepped into the two biggest cinematic universes on the planet. In Rogue One, A Star Wars Story 2016, he became Saw Gerrera, the rebel fighter with the raspy voice, the limp, and the piercing, haunted eyes. The character was so unforgettable that Disney brought him back in Andor 2022. In 2018, Whitaker joined the MCU in Black Panther, playing Zuri, the wise elder and spiritual leader of Wakanda. Forest Whitaker achieved what few African-American actors ever have. He became a global icon, appearing in both high art films and blockbuster cultural phenomena. He reached heights every actor dreams of. Yet in bitter irony, even as Forest Whitaker stood at the peak of glory, fate dragged him down into the abyss in the cruelest way. The light of the Oscar was not enough to make a black actor greater. Unhidden tragedy. When glory cannot defeat darkness. The most painful memory of Forest Whitaker's life is the day he was searched like a criminal. It was February 15, 2013. Forest Whitaker walked into Milano Market Delicatessen, a well-known spot in Manhattan's Upper West Side, just to grab lunch. An Oscar-winning star dressed simply walking in as nothing more than a customer. But what happened next became one of the most humiliating experiences of his life. As Whitaker headed toward the door, an employee suddenly stopped him. In front of other customers and passers-by, the employee ordered him to raise his hands and stand against the wall for a frisk, suspecting him of shoplifting. No evidence, no explanation. Just cold eyes and hands rifling through his jacket and pants pockets. In the middle of bustling Manhattan, an Oscar-winning actor was treated like a common thief. They found nothing, because he had done nothing wrong. The store rushed to issue an apology, but the wound could not be erased. As he left, Whitaker only managed to say one short, broken sentence: "It was humiliating." For a man who once stood on the Oscar stage, that moment was like a slap across the face. Not only an attack on his dignity, but also a brutal reminder of reality. Skin color could still turn a great man into a suspect. The incident sparked outrage across the nation. Headlines thundered, "If even Forest Whitaker, an Oscar-winning artist, can be treated like this, what about ordinary black men?" Major outlets from the Huffington Post and The Guardian to CNN reported the story. Many commentators called it undeniable proof of the silent, insidious racism that lingers in America. People expected a high-profile lawsuit, a dramatic battle for justice from a Hollywood legend. But Forest chose silence. He refused to sue, refused to turn the incident into media spectacle. Instead, he made a single humble request: train employees, so no one else would ever have to endure such humiliation. In just one Manhattan afternoon, Forest Whitaker went from legendary artist to a public victim of social prejudice. He would later call it one of the most painful experiences of his life. But the tragedy did not end there. His own family would soon cast even darker shadows over the life of this legend. A broken marriage, a shattered family. In 1996, Forest Whitaker entered a new chapter of his life. He married Keisha Nash, a former model once seen as the queen beside a Hollywood legend. At that time, the two of them were the picture of enduring love, both under the spotlight and away from it. Forest, quiet, profound, introspective. Keisha, graceful, strong, intelligent. They had 2 daughters together, and Whitaker also cared for Keisha's child from a previous relationship. They built what seemed like the perfect home. The public often saw them in photos of a happy family, warm and simple moments that looked unbreakable. But reality was different. In the years that followed, work constantly pulled Forest away from Hollywood projects to international roles, leaving him almost absent from family life. Endless travels, packed filming schedules, and the pressure of maintaining his Oscar-winning image created a distance from his wife and children that could not be bridged. On top of that, their personalities began to clash. Forest was quiet, deep, and introverted, while Keisha was strong, independent, and at times felt abandoned. Conflicts simmered beneath the surface, over raising the children, managing personal life, and how they shared pressure and love. All of it tightened into a knot that even Hollywood glamour could not untangle. Finally, after 22 years together, Whitaker officially filed for divorce in 2018. At 60, Forest was suddenly forced to confront loneliness, loss, and emptiness, things that neither fame nor an Oscar statue could ever mend. If the divorce in 2018 left Forest Whitaker with a void that was hard to fill, then by the end of 2023, that emptiness was carved even deeper. Tragedy strikes. The death of his ex-wife, Keisha Nash, 2023. On December 6, 2023, Keisha Nash, his former wife, his companion through youth and more than 2 decades of his life, breathed her last at 51. The cause of death was listed as liver failure related to alcohol, a sudden end that also revealed the private struggles she had carried. The news hit like a knife. Though divorced, Whitaker had never let go of the memories of the woman who was once his other half. They had walked together through Hollywood's spotlight, raised children together, and stood side by side on red carpets as a couple weathering every storm. Now all that remained was the heavy silence of death and fragments of memories broken inside his heart. For his daughters, Sonnet and True, the loss was even more devastating. Both shared emotional tributes, calling their mother the light and the heart of the family. Forest, even in the role of father, could not ease all the pain for his children. The tragedy was this: Keisha's death was not only the loss of a life, but the permanent closing of a vital chapter in Forest Whitaker's own story. It forced him to face the truth that all the glory, fame, and golden Oscars are powerless against personal loss. Haunted by loneliness, Forest Whitaker began to search for another kind of meaning to fill the void in his life. And he found it in places far away, in lands torn apart by war, by smoke and blood. Whitaker chose to step out into the world to save others. Yet in bitter irony, that very journey carved even more scars into his own soul, a man already too familiar with tragedy. The pain of the world's wounds. Alongside his acting career, Whitaker chose a path few Hollywood stars would dare, becoming the man who carries the world's pain. In 2011, he was appointed UNESCO Special Envoy for Peace and Reconciliation. In 2012, he founded the Whitaker Peace and Development Initiative, WPDI, a nonprofit dedicated to bringing education technology and conflict resolution skills to regions ravaged by war. More than a decade later, WPDI has expanded from Africa to Mexico, South Africa, and even the United States, directly impacting the lives of over 2 million people. Whitaker was never just a figurehead. He personally went to conflict zones like South Sudan, Uganda, Mexico, and South Africa, meeting, listening, and training young people on the ground. There he faced a world utterly unlike Hollywood. No red carpets, no golden statues, only the eyes of children scarred by war, women who had lost families, and communities drowning in hatred. He witnessed horrors firsthand that words could barely capture. In a speech at the United Nations, Whitaker once said, "When you look into the eyes of someone struggling just to survive, you understand what darkness really is. And when you touch the trembling hands of a mother who lost her child to war, you realize that pain will haunt you for the rest of your life." That was his tragedy, a soul too rich in empathy forced to confront humanity's collective trauma over and over again. Every mission etched a new scar into his memory, a haunting he could never escape. On screen, he could yell cut and step out of a role. In real life, there was no camera to release him from the pain he witnessed. Forest Whitaker turned compassion into action, inspiring thousands of young people in war-torn regions. But the price he paid was to live with the weight of thousands of tragedies he carried back from those places. Despite enduring so much darkness, Whitaker has always sought ways to maintain balance in his own life. His answer was a lifestyle so austere that many call it monastic Hollywood, the austere, unusual man of cinema. In a world of Hollywood luxury and temptation, Forest Whitaker stood out for his almost unbelievable discipline. In an interview with People, he admitted that in over 6 decades of life, he had taken only about 10 vacations. The number stunned many because for a star earning millions, yachts, resorts, and long getaways were considered normal. But for Whitaker, work and mission always came before personal pleasure. He often described his lifestyle as monk-like. Every day he kept a demanding rhythm, reading scripts, training, filming, and managing his humanitarian efforts. Instead of chasing glamorous distractions, Whitaker chose seclusion, devoting time to study, meditation, and research. One of his most important daily habits is meditation. He practices it every day, calling it his spiritual weapon against stress. Whitaker has said that through meditation, he maintains calm in the face of life's upheavals. In many interviews, Forest Whitaker has emphasized that his artistic career is not about chasing fame, but about a human journey. "I don't act so people will know me. I act so people will recognize themselves in the characters." For him, acting and humanitarian work are not separate. Both are ways to connect people, to foster understanding, and to heal. Forest Whitaker's wealth, the light and the numbers, behind the glory. At 64, after more than 4 decades in film and television, Forest Whitaker has built an estimated net worth of about $25 million. This is the figure consistently reported by outlets that track celebrity wealth, such as Celebrity Net Worth and Coming Soon. For him, it is not just money, but proof of resilience, relentless effort, and a secure place in Hollywood's unforgiving world. The bulk of his fortune comes from acting. He has earned multi-million-dollar paychecks for major film roles. Beyond acting, Whitaker has also worked as a director and producer, which added significantly to his total wealth. One of his most notable assets was his Hollywood real estate. In 2003, he purchased 2 adjacent estates in the Hollywood Hills, totaling nearly 1.6 acres, around 6,500 square meters. The property included a Mediterranean-style villa, a pool spa, landscaped gardens, a private driveway, and a gated compound, the perfect secluded retreat for a star. In 2017, he listed the entire property for $4.3 million, but after several negotiations, he sold it in 2020 for around $3.85 million. While not a mega mansion like those of billionaire celebrities, the home reflected a lifestyle of elegance, privacy, and restraint, true to his quiet nature. Unlike many Hollywood stars known for flaunting luxury cars, yachts, or extravagant living, Forest Whitaker stood out for his simplicity. He rarely appeared on lists of big spending celebrities. Instead, he chose a quiet life, focusing on family, art, and humanitarian work. In truth, Forest Whitaker's wealth cannot only be measured by the $25 million figure. It is also measured in spiritual value. His unforgettable roles, his steady career, and his image as a decent, scandal-free artist in a Hollywood often dominated by controversy. But even a wealthy, discreet star like Forest Whitaker has not been entirely free from financial troubles. The dark side of wealth. A tax scandal with the IRS in 2017, his name surfaced in a dispute with the U.S. Internal Revenue Service (IRS), one of the rare times his private finances were dragged into the media spotlight. According to court records, Whitaker and his ex-wife reported more than $1.5 million in income in a single year. Yet the amount of tax they had paid was only about $15,000, unusually low. The IRS quickly intervened, rejecting his request to pay the back taxes in installments and demanding full, immediate payment. The matter escalated into a legal dispute in which Whitaker ultimately lost. Forbes at the time called it a wake-up call for stars about managing income and taxes. Though not a moral or criminal scandal, it was still considered a scratch on Whitaker's otherwise spotless image. The public, long familiar with him as a quiet, compassionate, scandal-free artist, suddenly saw the truth even an Oscar winner could stumble over something as mundane as taxes. At 64, many Hollywood stars choose to step back, take smaller roles, or even vanish from the screen. But Forest Whitaker is different. He is not merely a survivor of this harsh industry. He is a defiant force proving that age cannot extinguish the fire of creativity. Forest Whitaker, when the spotlight still burns, the legacy already shines. In 2025, Whitaker is returning with two films that could not be more different: Havoc and Rose's Baby. Havoc, directed by Gareth Evans, the name behind the blood-soaked The Raid films, promises to be a violent, breathless spectacle on Netflix. If Havoc is brutality, testosterone, and darkness, Rose's Baby is the opposite. A romantic drama filled with tenderness and heartbreak. Not just on the big screen, Whitaker also maintains a powerful presence in television. Godfather of Harlem enters its fourth season in 2025, with him still embodying Bumpy Johnson, a gangster as brutal as he is human. More importantly, Whitaker is not only the lead actor, but also a producer, ensuring the series stays authentic, tackling race injustice and violence in the 1960s with unflinching honesty. The same year, audiences eagerly await the return of Saw Gerrera in Andor Season 2. Though just a supporting character in the Star Wars universe, Whitaker turned Saw into a chilling icon, a radical rebel living proof of the price ideals can demand. Family. Warm images. After loss. After the tragic death of his ex-wife, Whitaker appeared with his daughters at the Faces of Hope Gala in September 2024, moving the media. No longer just a dazzling star, he was seen simply as a father holding his daughters' hands, a small family standing together after the storm. It was proof of resilience, a man who had lost much yet fought to hold on to what was most precious. Humanitarian work, from Hollywood to South Sudan. Even while working in film, Whitaker dedicates much of his time to WPDI Whitaker Peace and Development Initiative. In 2025, WPDI partnered with Intelsat to bring high-speed satellite internet to 10 community learning centers in South Sudan and Uganda. For thousands of young people in remote areas trapped by conflict and poverty, this is more than internet access. It is their only doorway to the world. Whitaker calls it technology for healing, turning connection into hope and education into a tool to overcome darkness. In just a decade, WPDI has touched more than 2.3 million lives in war-torn regions. And here lies the greatest paradox: while he continues to bear his own tragedies, Whitaker sows hope into the lives of strangers. It is as if his personal darkness is transformed into light for others. Influence, the legacy of eyes that tell stories. After more than 4 decades, Forest Whitaker's legacy is not just films or awards. It lies in the way he redefined acting. He never had the classic Hollywood look, nor the glossy charm. Instead, he possessed a strange weapon's sorrowful eyes. From his congenital ptosis, once a source of ridicule, those eyes became a symbol telling stories more powerful than dialogue. His legacy also lies in his extreme dedication, living as his characters, learning languages, reshaping his body, even isolating himself, just to reach a role's soul. That sacrifice created unforgettable transformations, from Charlie Parker to Idi Amin, from Bumpy Johnson to Saw Gerrera. But beyond the art, his greatest legacy is humanity. He chose to become a voice for lands forgotten by the world. Through WPDI, he turned fame and fortune into tools to deliver education, technology, and hope where once there were only gunshots. Millions of lives have been changed because of his work that is the true golden statue, untouched by the dust of time. A legend still writing his story. He is a flame, slow, steady, burning bright through pain, a fate beyond heartbreaking and beyond inspiring.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.